it's Brian with GreyWolf Towers again. So today's video is going to be another one of those oddities. I think I'm starting to find a niche with oddities. So this here is, I believe, a Pro Desk. HP Pro Desk 400 G3. Single thumb screw, pops off the side panel. Inside you have a roughly standard size power supply. This one is 500 watts. Plenty of capability for a decent video card. Now, I am not seeing a dedicated PCIe power cable in it. It does, however, use standard power cables to the motherboard, so you could easily swap this out just like with a lot of the Dell Optiplexes. Not all the Dell Optiplexes, mind you, but a lot of them. Let's see. Oh, wait. Here's the bundle of cables. HP stuffs them in here. Let's see here. Got a lot of... Aha! There we go. So, dang. It not only has a 8-pin video card power cable, but it also has two 6-pin power cables as well. So if you can use a single 8-pin or single 6-pin, you're set. If you can use an 8-pin and a 6-pin, you're set. If you need two 8-pins, you just need an adapter, which can usually be found on Amazon for under 10 bucks or on eBay for 2 or 3 bucks with shipping from China. I actually have some graphics cards on the way. They were supposed to be here today but got delayed. But they will take the single 8-pin. And so this power supply, being 500 watts, it should be more than capable of running this system, which, by the way, is a i3-6100. Now, if you saw the previous video, I did a G4560 upgrade with a GTX 1650. This one I'm going to do an upgrade in the future, probably early next week, or this weekend possibly, because it is Friday today, and I'm hoping that those video cards come tomorrow, and I will show them in a video. But this also has only 2 DIMM slots for RAM. One of them is occupied with a 4 GB stick. Now, if you've watched the videos that I have on how to install DIMMs, now if you've watched my previous videos on how to install DDR4 RAM and Ryzen CPUs, you will know that there's a dual channel 2x4 GB kit on Amazon for roughly $30 right now, and that is non-sale price, so it is the regular price, and that will fit perfectly into here to beef up its performance with dual channel as opposed to single channel, or you can beef up to 2x8 for a 16 GB kit. That's up to you. Me personally, I would rather go with the 2x8s, but the 2x4s will get you up and running and get you a budget system for not much more. Again, I got this on a very good special where this was actually free, so I don't have a price for it to give you an exact price, but I would expect to pay roughly $200 for this type of a system. Being used, being 6th gen, it's a bit pricier than the Optiplexes that are under $100 usually, because those below $100 are usually 2nd, 3rd, or 4th gen at the very best. Typically when I was flipping the Optiplexes, I was buying the i5 variants of the 2nd gen, the 2400, 2500s, roughly 40, 50 bucks, and the 3rd gens were roughly 75, and the 4th gens were usually right around 90 to 100. And those all run DDR3 1600 megahertz at the fastest, whereas this will start at 2133, and with the 6th gen, I believe they're capable of running 2400. And so I'm going to put some upgrades into this after this video, but I wanted to show a video to go with my Ryzen videos that I just showed, which showed you how to install the Ryzen CPU as well as the DDR4 RAM. So for this process, we're going to show you how to install a Intel chip. Now, unfortunately, I lost the charger to one of my cameras, so I only have this camera going right now, but I'll try and show you each part that's important as we go. Now, because this is an upgrade, there is existing thermal paste and existing stuff already in place as far as everything goes. So I'm going to have to remove the CPU cooler, then we'll remove the CPU, and then we'll do the upgrade and place everything back in. That. So HP, unfortunately, in their infinite wisdom, decided that the regular Phillips head screws were not the right way to go. No, no, no. Their computers must have better. So they have Star Tool screws. So swap out the head real quick. Now if you haven't seen it previously, I've done an unboxing of this screwdriver. This is the Oriya, and I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, Oriya or Oriya. This is a this is a pen style electric screwdriver, and that means that it's really thin like a pen, but it's not. I mean, its diameter is probably about 1/2 inch, so it's a rather beefy screwdriver compared to like my $10 Hyper Tough one from Walmart is a hand screwdriver, so it's considerably smaller than this screwdriver. But the benefit of this is that it fits in many of the same places and is electric, which is very handy for me since I've lost the use of some of my hands. And by hands I mean parts of my hand, not as in, you know, I have more than 2 hands, but both hands suffer nerve damage. But I'm still capable of doing this, and I enjoy this. This is a part of my self-therapy. I love doing this kind of stuff. It helps me to feel a little better. So there we go. Now we are going to use our trusty paper towels, which you can pick up at Walmart for like a roll for $1. This thermal paste is not super bad because it's not like the Dell Optiplexes that you typically see where they're, you know, 8 years old and nobody's ever swapped the thermal paste. This is a 6th gen system, so it's only 3 or 4 years old, 5 years old, something like that. They stopped putting the dates on the chips. I didn't notice that. Used to be that you'd see, you know, manufacture dates like 2010, 2011, like that on the older i5s and i3s and stuff like that. Alright, so we took off the thermal paste, and that's going to be an important difference because, as I said in my Ryzen installation guide, the same principle applies here. If you get a new CPU with a CPU cooler, it actually should fit into this here because it uses the standard 4-pin PWM fans. So a standard CPU cooler should work with this as long as it's got the posts. Otherwise, you got to pull out the motherboard, remove the back plate, put on a new back plate if it requires a back plate, or if it doesn't require a back plate, it should fit in without the back plate to this one. But the posts are designed for screws, and being that it's a closed case with no vents even on the side, it really is going to be fine to have a crappier looking standard one. But the reason that I take the thermal paste off is because you should reapply thermal paste anytime you take off the cooler. Now you can see here the CPU is in there and just bare. I'm going to take it out. To do that, there is a lever, okay, just like with the Ryzen, but this lever is a little bit different. It's more of a hinge, and it pops up with a spring to it, and then it lifts up a little don't know how to word it, and I doubt you can see it from there, but it has this little latch cover to it that it pulls up, and that's going to hold, it's a retention bracket for the CPU. So now we're going to pull out the old CPU. Now on these you do still get the arrow tip or golden triangle on the one tip, but you also get these little notches on a part of it, and those notches make sure that it only goes in there. There is on older boards, I want to say 1st gen, 2nd gen, somewhere in there, where you could cut the notch off of the motherboard side, and that would allow you to slot in Xeons. So now with this, this is going to be an upgrade from an i3-6100 to an i5-6500. So speed of the individual cores is going to be a little bit lower. The i3 has dual core 4 threads at 3.7 gigahertz, and this is 4 cores 4 threads at 3.2 gigahertz. So per core speed is a little bit less, but the performance is boosted because the dual core 4 threads is roughly equal to 3 cores 3 threads, and so the 4 cores 4 threads is slightly better performance, especially in the multitasking. So now for this you just match the notches and the arrow to the same places. Now before I do though, as I stated in the Ryzen install video, the pads are different on the Intel side. The motherboard in the socket has the pins, whereas the CPU has pads that those pins lay under. And so you got to be very careful installing these. The pins are extremely delicate, much more delicate than the pins on the CPUs for the Ryzens, at least the 1st and 2nd gen ones. 3rd gen ones are a bit gentler, are a bit more sensitive. So this one here, you just lay down right over top, boom, done. And it sits in there. You don't press, you don't push, you don't wiggle it, and then you lay down the latch, put down the retention arm or lever, and voila, you have a CPU installed. So now, this motherboard, just so you're aware of future upgrades, the power supply has the capability of doing the video cards. The motherboard has USB 3 ports built on, like the headers built onto it, and it is 3 SATA connectors inside. One goes to the DVD drive, one goes to the existing hard drive, which on this model, for whatever reason, they put in a laptop hard drive, and I don't know why. Let's see here. Let's see if we can get that out real quick. Now, depending on how small this is, I may go with a slightly larger one. If this is a decent sized hard drive, I'll keep it. If it's a small one, then I'll switch it out for something else. 500 gigabytes. It's probably a 5400 RPM, so I would not use it as my only drive. I would either replace it with a 7200 RPM full-size desktop drive, or I would add a SSD. So now, unfortunately, this motherboard does not include M.2 support, which is unusual because I've seen older boards support those. So I will have to use a regular full-sized SATA SSD with this. which is kind of disappointing, but it's also understandable that they cut that corner. It looks like it was also originally supposed to have 4 DIMMs on the motherboard, but only has 2 socketed into it. So there is that. With this though, let's finish the install of the CPU. We're going to use my Arctic Alumina, which is a ceramic based thermal paste, which actually is pretty good. It's non-conductive, if I understand it correctly, which has been very useful with video cards that I've done with it. Put a little bit extra on and it doesn't destroy the card by shorting it out. And you're probably not going to be able to see it, but you just put a pea-sized dot there of the thermal paste. My Ryzen video should show that amount. If you have a new cooler, you do not put it on because the new cooler should have the thermal paste installed already. If there's no thermal paste on the cooler or CPU, then go ahead and do it. No CPU comes with thermal paste applied except for used ones, so keep that in mind. And just like with the Ryzen build, I'm doing this in an alternating star pattern like you do with the lug nuts on your car, and that's to keep the pressure even so that there's less chance of cracking the CPU or putting so much pressure on it that it bends pins. And then once it's what's called hand tight, which means that it stops turning on its own and you don't have to struggle with it, is when I stop. So, but that there is the replacement of Intel Core i chips, and it's any of them from 1st gen up to the current 10th gen. They all are the same as far as installation method. With a new motherboard as opposed to one that's in a pre-built, there will be a little tab, like a little plastic cover over the pins of the socket for the CPU. And for that, there's 2 methods that people use. One is you just open up the lever and you pop off the plastic piece, which is what I typically do. The other train of thought, or whatever you call it, is that they will often just put the CPU in, push down on it with the lever to close it and everything, and let it pop off from the pressure there. I have seen in very rare cases where that extra pressure bends pins, and so that's why I usually don't do that. I'll usually pop it out by hand, put the CPU in, close it down, and it's done. It's an extra 2 seconds of time. It's not a big deal. So, but that is the installation process of a Intel-based CPU. Now this system here is going to be part of a video that I'm going to do in the near future, probably this weekend or sometime next week, the week before Christmas. So hopefully that'll be up around Christmas time or shortly after. But overall, it's not bad. I'll also see if I can find another SSD, like a standard SSD to put in here, because it should have that. And then if you all want, comment down below if it's something that you'd be interested in, and I will see about posting it on Mercari, and we can see about selling this system, because I have no need for it. I'll probably post it for about $450 because of the fees, and it'll come out to be about $350 that I get out of it, and that'll cover the $100 on the video card that I'm going to be using, the extra RAM that I'm going to be using, the fact that I upgraded the CPU to an i5. Those are all additional costs that are going to add in a little bit, because the system with the i3 is roughly $200. It's about 80 to 100 for the i5, so you're already at almost 300 right there. And then on top of that, you've got the SSD, the extra RAM, and everything there. So anyway, hope you all enjoyed it. If you found it entertaining, informational, useful at all, make sure you hit the like button down below. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button up here, and that way you can keep up to date on our new videos and our community section. And then, as always, if you have any questions about the products, myself, or the channel, feel free to throw them in the comment section down below, and we will get to those as soon as we're able to. So thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great day. Bye for now.